Sorry about that, everybody. I think everyone's the right way up now. Hopefully we're back online. We were talking about suitable placements for D. Go.
Okay. I probably did go into a waffly mode. That's probably what made it written crap a little bit. But if I give you I've just had time to write a little list of some of the placements that our students are currently in. So we've got parent support advisors, people working in youth services, school nurses, students working in special schools, primary schools. We've got students working in drug and alcohol teams, and students in residential care homes for children possibly in care. So it's becoming a little bit more diverse as we recruit new students.
Okay, we're back.
Is that you might start off with one placement and then you might move your placement. You might find you get a pay. So in a way, it doesn't mean that that's the one you'll keep for the whole of the 2 years. Yeah. Sometimes on the team might change their placement to early years.
Another setting.
Yeah. And I think from the careers point of view, I tend to encourage people to change placements, to see if they can have a variety over 2 years, just because it adds that breadth to your ability and also help you work out which setting you like and the roles that you.
I found that our students do that. We've got a current level 4 student whose ideas and interests are changing within the experience he's having.
We're dropping in and out, sorry everybody.
Sorry everybody. I was just going to say that's another sort of important factor if you're at the beginning of thinking about doing this degree and wanting to know, well, what jobs can it lead to? In that actually you might change. You might go, and if you were doing a professional training course, let's say that you decided you wanted to be a social worker, you might change your mind if you were on that, and then it's actually really difficult to do something about it. Whereas if you're doing a degree which is more open-ended, you can change your mind because it's not training you for one particular job, and actually then you find you don't really want to do that job anymore. So that's a big advantage of this kind of degree, I think. It does allow you a bit of space. Thinking
space.
I'm going to say here one of the questions we had before, which was, can I go on to teacher training? While I make sure that I've read all the other comments. Now we're in 2 different places.
Okay. Teacher training, absolutely yes. As long as you do your level 6, so as long as you've got your level 6 honours degree, whether that's at FDCAMH or if you decided to do the BAP level 6, or another level 6 top up somewhere else, then you would be eligible for teacher training. The kind of teacher training, so primary mainly, because you wouldn't have a subject specialism, but it's worth saying that if any of you have got an A-level in a shortage subject, maths, the sciences, geography, modern languages, for example, then even if you haven't got a degree in that subject, there are opportunities for you to train as a teacher if you've got the degree. You might need to do what's called a subject knowledge enhancement course, which is funded, and it's usually a 6-week, 7-week course, and then you can do your teacher training for secondary if you wanted to. So both primary and secondary might be open to you with CAM.
And what about person-centred counselling? Would this be the right degree if that's what I wanted to do?
I'm looking at this.
Again, by the same logic, as Josie was just saying, if you've done the top-up level 6, I can definitely speak about the diploma training, the person-centred diploma training, which would be a 2-year diploma professional training following on. Whether or not you would want to do another whole degree in person-centred counselling.
But the diploma in counselling that we were talking about earlier, presumably that has an element of, presumably counselling is person-centred. Would that be the level 4 diploma in counselling, or would that be kind of similar to the person-centred diploma?
So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Josie, but person-centred is a modality, and there are lots of different modalities in counselling. So there's transaction analysis, there's humanistic, there's gestalt, there's all sorts of different sort of ways. So the diploma that I did at the IML, for example, was an integrative humanistic diploma, which then brought in person-centred counselling. It also brought in transaction analysis, gestalt, existential therapy, and a lot of different humanistic therapies that you can then draw upon depending on who's in front of you, who you're supporting, and it helps. I chose that because of its flexibility, and really liked that approach. Yeah. But I know, for example, at Camborne, they do a purely person-centred diploma, where you just use that one modality. So
that's at the same level. It's the same level diploma as the integrative counselling diploma that you did. Is it all?
I think so. So I think the diploma that I did anyway was at level 5, educational level 5. But because it's not the academic route of qualifications, it's just as a sort of a parallel. So you can't come away and say, I have got a level 5 degree in counselling, but it's assessed at that level, if that makes sense.
So if somebody wants to be a counsellor, does the CAM degree help them in that journey, or can they do the certificate and the diploma without having a degree at all?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you do not need. I think you might need an O-level. Sorry,
Whoops. Wow. Show your age now. Come on, you can't show us all up. We're using the right terms here.
How did I do that? So GCSE in English and Maths is my understanding in order to get on to do the diploma. But you don't need a degree to do, because it's a professional training rather than an academic, down the academic route.
So that question, the student who asked, prospective student who asked that question, it's about whether you want to get a degree and then do your professional counselling training after that, or whether you just want your professional counselling training without and have that qualification without having a degree.
And usually the consideration regarding the foundation degree is, because it is a full-time degree, it can occasionally lead to students having the support of earning while they're learning within their own practice. So sometimes that is something that helps support students along the way until they've decided what exactly.
Well, it's funded in a different way, isn't it? So if you were going to do the foundation degree, you've got a tuition fee loan, you've got a maintenance loan. You don't start to pay those back until you're earning over a certain amount of money. If you do the professional training certificate and diploma, you don't get that same type of loan. So it's
more self-funded.
It's more self-funded, and that's another consideration, I think.
I mean, there are pots of money, and there may be more available because of the situation with children's mental health. So, but I remember, again, coming back to the IML, that there was a list of potential sources of funding to support people in funding the diploma. So, and again, don't rule out the possibility that there may be some support out there, but it's definitely not the same as a student loan for the degree course.
I'm going to ask you to repeat yourselves now, because unfortunately, when we cut out, you were in the middle of answering Dee's question about placements.
Oh, that's okay.
So she says the fact that she's already a TA and a volunteer qualified counsellor, would that be... look at that Tracey smile.
Yes, it is a Tracey smile, because that's a...
It's back.
It's a fantastic role in which to that you're in. So, in answer to your question, yes, it is. Different students doing many different roles. But yeah.
Kate has asked, mental health nursing. How can a degree help with mental health nursing?
Well, this is an interesting one, Kate. It kind of depends, I think, on where you want to train to be and you honestly chip in especially if I say something that's not correct. So, for example, Plymouth University, they say anyone who has a degree that they think could be relevant, if they contact them and tell them what they've done in their degree, it might be that you can go on to year 2 of the nursing, of any nursing programme, so mental health nursing, adult nursing, whatever.
So they credit prior learning.
So they credit prior learning, but it's not. It's something that is up to each individual training provider, university, how they accredit that learning. So I know, for example, that in the past, health and social care foundation degree students that I've worked with in a different location, a couple of them went on to adult nursing in Plymouth, and they went straight on to their year 2 of the nursing degree, which is really significant. It cuts out a whole year.
Sure.
It's definitely worth thinking about. So my advice, if you're interested in mental health nursing, is to contact the university that you think you'd be interested in doing that with, and explain what you're doing, and take it from there. And they will probably ask you either to come in and talk to them about the modules that you've done, or to email them with the information about what you've done. And I would really push for you to be saying, I think I've got the experience to start on year 2.
I mean, from what Josie's saying, I think that that's a really good general principle for whatever you may wish to do, because this is a new degree. So it could just be that wherever you may want to do the next bit of learning or training or whatever it is, that they may not have heard of it yet, but for you to actually take it to them and say, look, this is what I've done, and you can talk in detail about the modules and the breadth of knowledge that that's given you. So.
We've had a question, I'm not sure if we'll be able to answer it or not. It's Tammy asking if Iron Mill are actually offering CAM and Exeter at the moment. Now, I know last year they didn't offer level 4 intake, but I don't know what's happening this year.
I don't know, but I'm happy to find out, because I'm going to be speaking to them anyway, so I'll get back to you on that.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, Kate says she's interested in child mental health nursing. She's just coming to the end of level 6 now on the degree.
So the way that nursing works, the branches of nursing, I think you would either be looking at child nursing or paediatric nursing or mental health nursing. Paediatric nursing, child nursing, is a bit harder to get into because it's more competitive, so there's a lot of people that want to do that. So it might be a little bit harder to have your prior learning accredited to go on straight on to year 2. I think the best thing to do, again, is to contact the university and explain what you're interested in and ask them what your options are. So, I mean, I'm only talking about Plymouth because I live in South Devon, I work in local schools, I happen to link quite a lot with Plymouth Uni, and I've always found that they've been really helpful when I've contacted them with questions like that. So I think don't be afraid to contact a university and ask them those kinds of questions. They will get back to you. And if they don't, push it so that they do, but they normally are pretty good.
Dion's asked, and we talked about this earlier, but I think she's only just joined us, so she's asked again, can you get student finance to do a master's?
Yeah. Dion, if you look on the and I say to everyone, on Blackboard, if you're a current student, on Blackboard there's a careers section which we're kind of trying to update quite regularly. And actually, I think it was only today or yesterday I've put a new folder on funding for postgraduate courses, and one of the links in that folder will take you to funding for master's degrees.
I'd get a copy and paste it onto the comments.
Okay, that's brilliant. So yeah, so you can now get a master's, a loan for a master's under the same terms as you would for an undergraduate course, although it might not fully fund the master's, it depends how expensive the master's is. I think it funds up to £10,000, which would fund most masters, but it's the masters in business, which are really, really expensive. It doesn't fund all of those, the MBA.
Yeah.
We've not got any more comments at the moment. So one of the questions we've got here, what does the future hold for CAM? Will there be more opportunities in the future?
Well, in talking about CAM, child and adolescent mental health, it depends what the question is. I think we're always going to have children on this earth, and I think there's always going to be mental health unwellness and wellness, so as long as them two things exist, we'll always need it.
So, I mean, my perspective on that is having seen it change a lot in the last 11 years, because I taught for 20 years and then retrained as a counsellor, and have really changed my own sort of career path over that time. And looking at what is already happening in other parts of the UK, so like in Wales, where they did a 3-year pilot where they put £8 million of government money into funding school-based counselling. There are precedents in other parts of the UK for where the local government has recognised the need and actually ring-fenced money and funded it. So I really do believe that because of the weight of need, it's just increasing all the time, sadly, in the support that's needed for children and adolescent mental health. There will inevitably be more jobs, I think, coming online in the next few years. So I think you really are well placed with the CAM degree to be able to be proactive in looking for the work.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, is that proactivity. I think it's like with any degree, it's only really as valuable as the person that's got it. So it is about you and what you have alongside that degree, and how you are proactively looking for opportunities. It feels with CAM, and a bit like with education, that there are opportunities there. If you seek them out, they might not come directly to you, which is why you talked about, if you're in a school, start to ask questions, be curious about what people are doing, talk to the different people who have different roles, talk to your tutors on the CAM degree. What's their background, what have they done, what do they recommend? So that kind of curiosity about what other people do is really important, isn't it? And it can open your mind to things that you might never have considered.
And I mean, the government's specification about there's going to be a mental health lead in every school in England is a role naturally made for anybody doing the degree that you have, particularly with the range of experiences that so many of the students I've worked with this year have, as support teachers, parent support advisors. That it would be a natural step. We don't know how that's going to work yet, and how schools are going to interpret it, and how the government's going to fund it. But really, there's a natural match there. So.
And I think as well, because a lot of schools and academies, or their multi-academy trusts, they control their own budget. They have got much more flexibility about how they use that money. So they don't necessarily have to employ someone who is, say, an educational psychologist trained to that level. They can employ someone who doesn't have that qualification. They're not bound anymore by what the local authorities used to tell them they had to do.
Sort of party line.
So there is a lot more flexibility. But again, you kind of have to make it work for you, don't you, as an individual?
We've got a question, so Dee's followed that up with, do you ladies think that there will likely be primary school based counsellors in the near future working in the sector?
Well, as somebody who runs a service that is already in 4 primary schools in Cornwall, where all those schools actually chose to continue the service year on year after, I really believe that this is going to develop. That's a big area for development, because there are currently more counselling services in secondary than there are in primary. But there's an increasing recognition of the need for early intervention. And I know from my own professional experience of working in both secondary and primary that often it is so much harder to support a teenager. It would have been, and you often think, gosh, if only I had had the chance to work with this person when they were 7 or 8. So I think definitely is the answer to that.
We missed a question from Tammy earlier, which I think was when we had our slight Wi-Fi wobble. Going back to placements, when they're on the degree, what is required from the placements point of view? What do they have to do?
The placement's responsibility is to mentor and guide the student to kind of make sure that the student has the opportunities to demonstrate core skills and attributes that are relevant to working with children and young people. That's in a paid or a voluntary setting. So it isn't too arduous. It's more that somebody just needs to have an overview of what the student's doing and a direction of their work, and kind of making sure that they're okay in the workplace, which we think works really well, because there's like a triad of support then for the student.
Lisa is very happy with your answer. No, Dee is very happy, sorry, Lisa, with your answer earlier about primary school-based counsellors, and says, can you have a word with Plymouth? Get some in place of Plymouth.
Plymouth have got the,
Sure.
they've got a contract, Young Devon have a contract to deliver counselling, but I think Dee probably will tell me it's in the secondary sector. But but it's going quite well, so it might be expanded. You can, and again, Dee, with schools being part of multi-academy trusts, if you've got a second, and I don't know in Plymouth whether there are some mats, but I would imagine there are, so you've probably got a secondary school or two with some primary schools as part of that MAT, multi-academy trust. Again, there might be opportunities that even if you were in Plymouth, in a secondary, you could go into the primary.
Sure.
What do you
So
think,
can
Lisa?
if I can just take a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about both, because I was a secondary school teacher and then started counselling in secondary, and then was asked by a number of primaries, where I was actually doing a bit of primary language work, to work with some children therapeutically in primary, and then I realised, thank goodness I had a supervisor who had a lot of experience working with younger children, primary age children. She said, look, just roll your sleeves up. You haven't got a play therapy diploma, you've got a general counselling diploma, and you've got the additional training that I now run in specialising working with children and young people, but still mainly adolescent based. The guidance was, get in there, roll your sleeves up, get down on the floor, and build up your skills. So coming back to the fact that Young Devon are working mainly in secondary, I would encourage anybody who is maybe sort of currently or looking to work with secondary age to have confidence in working with primary age children in counselling. It is different because you do have to use play as a medium a lot more. Your top juniors you can maybe do a little bit more cognitive work with, but the younger years you definitely have to be prepared to get in there and play. So,
And can I just ask a question? How do you think that the modules that you've been delivering support the work that you did within the schools in terms of knowledge base?
So you mean 3005 and
Yeah.
3006? I mean particularly 3006, which is therapeutic interventions. I mean there's a real link. The only thing is, of course, it's 8 weeks worth of lots of different interventions. So it's literally a taster of each one. It's a taster, and clearly it's not a professional training or anything like that. But at least it gives people a really good broad idea of what's out there and a feel for what people might want to develop. So yeah, definitely.
We've got a question from Susie, who's currently on level 5 of the teaching and learning, and she is thinking of doing level 6 in CAM, but she wants to know, would she be at a disadvantage compared to the others that have studied CAM in levels 4 and 5?
We do a summer activity set of what were they called? More than activities.
It's like a course. Is it like a pre-level 6 course?
Yeah,
the summer
program, which kind of gives you the kind of the core elements of the level 4 and the level 5. Obviously, it's not substantial enough to be a 2-year foundation degree, but it kind of gives you a flavour. I mean, if you wanted to go on Facebook, you could have a look at the last year's summer school modules and you could have a look at that. But certainly we had six teaching and learning students join one of our Red Ruth group, and they had 6 CAM students on there, and they've worked really, really well together. It might be good to get some testimonials from the teaching and learning students to see how they've experienced it and whether they feel like they've been disadvantaged. But
I think that Anne, the overall, I never remember what Anne's role, the overall leader.
HE leader,
She said at a meeting recently that that when she talked to those students, they found it quite tough at first,
Yeah.
but they were up and running quite quickly because they knew they would have to catch up a bit, so they put that effort in over the summer, and they didn't necessarily feel by Christmas.
Well, they're still there. If that's anything to go by, they're kind of still there.
And at Plymouth, there are 3 people who came across from teaching and learning into the CAM top-up.
Yeah.
So,
And would you say the same thing, that actually there's...
I would, and I think the students have worked amazingly well together. Actually, and supported one another.
Yeah. So. And we wouldn't not allow, but we wouldn't encourage students from the teaching and learning if we didn't think that the knowledge was transferable. You know, they do a lot of child development, they do a lot of
we do a lot of psychology, learning, motivation for learning, behaviour.
Yeah.
And another thing that came out on Tuesday this week actually was the fact that actually the teaching and learning assessments have prepared the students very well for the assessments that come into the level 6 top-up as well. So that's a point worth making.
Yeah, and Poppy is one of those students you've just mentioned who's gone from teaching and learning to CAM, and she said it's a hard transition, but she's really enjoying it now.
Okay.
So that's brilliant.
Thank you for that.
Cindy says good evening. Hi, Cindy.
Hello, Cindy.
And Katie says, for those of us that are currently coming to the end of level 6, I'm not sure which, whether she's on the BAP or the CAM top-up, what career positions could we be looking to progress on to, which I think is the question we've had in different forms.
Yeah. It depends. We've talked about professional training after you've done your degree that would qualify you for particular careers like teaching, social work, counselling. If you didn't want to do that extra study, then how long is a piece of string?
Yeah.
I think it's as Tracey has said, that actually, if we're talking, let's talk specific roles. So when I looked last week at Indeed, the great jobs website, and I was looking for jobs that didn't require a degree in CAM, but where you would think actually that would be really useful, it would give you an advantage in that application. So things like mental health advocate was coming up a few times, and when you again chip in. So that's a role where you're not necessarily working with children, you might not even be working with young people, but you're working with people with mental health issues who actually perhaps need a voice, and you're helping them find that voice. So that there were 2 or 3 roles in Devon and Cornwall for mental health advocates. Mental health first aid was another job that was advertised. I can't remember now where it was. Young Devon were looking for people to help them support, I think, one of their projects. They have a contract for various projects. It might have been advocacy, actually, advocating for young people. Family support worker. Again, you don't need a degree to be a family support worker, but actually it's quite a competitive job to go for. Quite a lot of people go for those jobs. So that would be a real advantage, having that degree. Parent support advisor, assistant Senko if you're in a school. Within the residential sort of children's home sector, or working with children in care or care leavers, there's quite a lot of opportunities for support workers there. Pay varies, conditions vary. Again, you don't need a degree, but the degree will definitely help you. So,
and we don't yet know how mental health leave in school is going to play out. So it's really worth, speaking to. If you are in a school already, just really put the feelers out, speak to whoever you can in terms of how the school is going to take that forward. And it could be that they vary, as you were saying, because of the academy structure now. There isn't going to be a party line on this, perhaps, but the schools are going to be able to interpret that individually. So if you're a trusted person within your school already, and you have a CAM degree, you may be really well placed.
And you might even be able to create a role for yourself if you go and promote what you do, and you see a need for something in that school, you might be able to carve that role out for yourself.
Definitely.
And a real example of that, because like Lisa said, local authorities aren't ring-fencing the money, so schools can be creative and design what they will. A student completed the level 4 and level 5 foundation with us, and then the school paid for her to go on to be a play therapist because she, you know, she demonstrated the skills and the passion, and the school said, okay, you know, now we'll take you on.
That's such a good point. I know a number of people who were sort of trusted nurture TAs within a school, and because they were trusted in what they were doing, and asked whether the school would support them to pay for their counselling training. That's exactly what happened. The only thing I would say on that is just make sure that you are upfront with them and value yourself enough to make sure that you do not then, after the counselling training, continue to be paid at the same rate. So,
and that's something that generally, in terms of the degree, gives you that confidence.
Yes.
Hopefully, that's what we're aiming for,
Yes.
to be able to advocate for yourself.
Kate says thank you very much, but she's got to go and bath some small people now and put them to bed. And it's lovely to see you, Tracey. So thanks, Kate. Hopefully you found it really useful. You should be able to watch the end of this later. It should come up on our Facebook page, so anyone who's missed any of it can re-watch it as well.
And something else about on the career section of Blackboard, there is a folder with job descriptions, and whenever I find something that, or anyone ever finds something that looks like it could fit with either of our degrees or one of our degrees or all of them, we put it into that folder. So just keep having a look. They're job descriptions for particular roles, but I would say when you're looking, look beyond a job title, because the same job can be called 4 or 5 different things within this whole education and mental health sector. So you need to sort of spend some time really exploring the job description.
Katie says thank you, lots of useful information there, because she's kind of done with studying after level 6, but there's lots of possibilities that don't involve more studying, so that's good.
And can I just say, for any new potential students who are interested in joining us for the child and adolescent mental health degree, if there is any doubt in your mind whether this is the right degree or not for you, and you don't feel that this has adequately answered your questions, please contact us, because the last thing we want to do is for you to embark on our degree with us not knowing whether this is the right degree for you. We might not be able to fully answer your question, and we have to stay as vague as it is in terms of we really don't know where this is going to take you, because it's your journey at the end of the day. It may take you somewhere where you never thought you may end up, or you might have, you know, a deep-rooted desire just to do it for yourself. Whatever the reason, you need to be sure it's the right degree for you. Okay?
It's a bit to end on, maybe, isn't
It has kind of, we've kind of